Hello and welcome. The topic with the editorial of 3rd September is Grim Sovereign Tangle. We'll have the same motive with this passage, hit words to nail. We shall be looking to fix those words that bring out the passage explicitly. Some of the words that have been used in the passage. Grim sovereign tangle. This is the topic itself. It refers to serious chaos with the government. Grim is serious. Sovereign is the government, is the boss, is the head. And tangle is chaos or trouble or some confusion, things like that. Fall victim to trust deficit. Now, to fall victim to trust deficit, deficit of trust is loss of trust. So, getting affected badly by loss of trust is fall victim to trust deficit. Existential crisis. Exist is the source for existential. So, crisis that questions existence is existential crisis. Serve as an exemplar of cooperative federalism. What is cooperative federalism? Federalism itself means a group of states. Cooperative means something, some action which is being cooperated by all these states. Now, serve as an exemplar of cooperative federalism means working like a very good model of cooperation among group of states. Fiscal relates to government revenue like taxes and all. This is fiscal. Spacious means something which is actually wrong, which is wrong in fact, but appears to be true or reasonable. Apparently, it looks like looks to be reasonable, but in fact, it is wrong. Impasse is a situation of no progress, deadlock, and deadlock mostly due to disagreements where the parties involved do not agree with each other, and so there is no progress. Engendered, it has a simple meaning: to give rise to. Engendered. So let us go ahead with the passage, the topic, grim sovereign tangle. Some serious government chaos. And the subtopic, GST reforms should not fall victim to the trust deficit from the compensation standoff. Now this clarifies the subtopic clarifies the actual episode or the thing that is to be discussed over here in the passage. It says that GST reforms. Now, goods and services tax (GST) was introduced some 3 years ago, and it was introduced to have a uniform tax imposition among all states. What happened earlier was the fact that the tax incidence varied from state to state, and each state used to collect its own tax related to goods and services. Now, once GST was introduced, The central government made it uniform. The tax, it made it uniform. So there were several governments that were expected to lose the tax from what they used to collect. And against that, the central government had a promise that they will compensate for that loss. And it is this compensation which is being talked over here. The reforms, the GST came up, and the promised compensation is moving away. It is not being paid to those states. This creates a loss of trust. So the reform, GST reform, should not fall victim to the trust deficit. This is what it says. 3 years after India's new indirect tax regime was introduced with a slogan of One Nation, One Tax, it faces an existential crisis. Now it says that 3 years ago, GST was introduced with a slogan of One Nation, One Tax. This GST, this indirect tax system, is finding a crisis of its own existence. Now, why there is crisis? The crisis due to rising inconfidence, inconfidence as to the amounts of collection that are being made and the compensation that are being forwarded to the states. So, despite its patchy structure and too many rates, complex compliance requirements, and multiple mid-course changes, the implementation of Goods and Services Tax (GST), overseen together by the center and states, had begun to almost serve as an exemplar of cooperative federalism. So, the problem has been indicated in the opening sentence, and now the story begins. The story says that the GST had so many hiccups in its formation. It had too many rates. Too many rates refer to different items that it covers has different rates. The rates are not uniform. The rates of taxation is not uniform across all goods and all services. Complex compliance requirements. The compliance, the compliance, the procedure in which return is to be filed, tax is to be collected is quite complex. It is not simple. And several midway changes, that came about after it being introduced. Despite these three things, the GST was seen by the states and the center that it was a very good way of federalism in which different states agreed for at least one thing. So it works out as an excellent model of cooperation between states. All of those gains have quickly unraveled as the slowdown in the economy, exacerbated by the COVID-19 lockdowns, has thrown all revenues calculations to the wind. Now it says that all those gains which were permuted and which were calculated earlier and which were achieved also quickly unraveled, quickly faded, quickly got lost into thin air as the slowdown in the economy, the slowdown had its impact in 2019 itself. And this aggravated, the slowdown further aggravated due to COVID 19 lockdowns. It has put all those revenue calculations to the wind. It has evaporated all those calculations. All those calculations became miscalculation. The center is obliged to pay states for a period of 5 years compensation of revenue shortfalls in return for their having ceded the power to levy the multiple taxes that were subsumed into GST. Now, it says that 5 years ago, 3 years ago, until 3 years ago, states used to collect their own taxes. Now, those were done away with and were merged into this GST system. The states ceded their they gave their power to levy the multiple taxes, and that was subsumed, that was merged into the GST. So this was done, this was sacrificed by states. They stopped collecting their own taxes, and the tax collection responsibility went under the head of GST. And against this sacrifice, states were promised for a compensation of 5 years for the losses they are likely to face on this account. And for that, since the center would be collecting that GST, the center will be obliged, it will be the duty of the center to pay the states for these losses in the form of compensation. Last week, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman asserted at what may have been the most tenuous GST Council meetings so far that the center will not be able to meet compensation shortfall. So the finance minister virtually put her hands in air and surrendered, saying that the center is just not able to make good for the compensation shortfall. This was a blatant reply beyond expectation. With GST collection sharply undershooting all targets this year, the center estimates compensation payable for the full year at 3 lakh crore. So, the compensation payable for the full year is expected to be at 3 lakh crore. And the GST collections are sharply are not up to mark, well below the target point. So this is a factual information. But just 65,000 crore is expected in the cess kitty used to pay out the compensation. It says that only 65,000 crore is expected to be in the cess kitty. The 65,000 crore to be collected as cess for paying the liability of around 3 lakh crore. So it is far less. The compensation cannot be met with this collection. Some alternate arrangement has to be made. So the first para gives the actual situation of the sorry position related to GST collections and the compensations promised by center to be paid to states, both facing sharp declines, steep falls, and so much so as to the extent of putting the whole system, existence of GST itself in crisis. So, such a severe shortfall is very much likely to wipe out the system itself, the GST system itself. In July, the center put out the last installment of compensation for the last fiscal and is so yet to pay anything for this year. It is a simple statement which says that July this year, just 2 months ago, 1 month ago, the center was able to clear the last installment of previous fiscal, and nothing has been done for this year, although one quarter has gone. April to June, that quarter has gone. States have now been given two options, both requiring them to borrow from the market. Now it says that states are now left with two options, and both these options require borrowing money from the market. This has been advised by the center. The center contends that only 97,000 crore of the revenue shortfall is from implementation of GST, while 1.38 lakh crore is due to extraordinary circumstances posed by an act of God. Now the center bifurcates the amount and says that the GST collections had a shortfall of 97,000 crore, while 1.38 lakh crore has been due to the deficit of 1.38 lakh crores has been due to COVID-19, the act of God. States can either borrow 97,000 crore without having it added to their debt and with the principal and interest paid out from future collections, or they can borrow the entire 2.35 lakh crore shortfall, but will have to provide for interest payments themselves. It has given two options to the states. The first is that they can borrow 97,000 crore, which was the first part, the deficit of collection, and if they borrow only 97,000 crore, that amount will not go to their debt portfolio, and the principal as well as the interest will be paid out from the future cess collections, and they don't have to bother for the payment to that extent. And the second option is that they can borrow the entire amount of 2.35 lakh crore, but in this case they will have to bear the burden of interest and the principal payment. Provide for the interest payments themselves. They will have to bear the brunt of interest. So it goes like that. The finance ministry has argued that higher borrowing by the center will push up interest rates and dent India's fiscal parameters. Now the FM says that if the center borrows more, the fiscal parameters will go down. It will erode. Dent means erode the India's fiscal parameters. Parameters are those principles with which the financial backbone of India holds good. At best, this is spacious. Now, the comment it says that this looks to be reasonable, but it is wrong. Why it is wrong? It is wrong because the total government debt, including states, is what rating agencies look at. It says that it is wrong because when rating agencies rate a country, they do not look for the debts of central government alone. They count the debts of states as well. So whole debt of the whole nation, the center as well as the states, are accounted while rating a country. And rating is very important to have further borrowings. Several states have rejected both options, and some, including Tamil Nadu, have urged the center to rethink in view of their essential and urgent spending needs to curb the pandemic and spur growth. Now, most of the states, it says that many states have rejected both the options. They say they are not ready to borrow any money. They say you had committed, you pay us the money. This is what the message goes. And Tamil Nadu has urged center to rethink over the matter as it requires urgent spending, not only to curb the pandemic, but also to improve the growth. Staring match is in the offing. Something grave looking is likely to come up. It is up to the center to resolve this impasse. This situation, the center has to resolve this situation in a way that future GST reforms do not fall victim to the trust deficit by this standoff. Now, if this compensation payment moves away, and the trust deficit will come up, and the GST reforms should not fall victim to such a such a trust deficit. The pandemic response is strengthened, and all-round government capital spending is bolstered sagging demand, not derailed. It says that the response against pandemic is being heightened, is being strengthened. That is, more hospitals are being opened, more this um, COVID care centers are being opened. Sorry, and all round government capital spending to improve sagging demand to falling demand is in place. It is not derailed. It is all in place. So these are the messages that come up uh, in spite of the falling GST collections. For now, the only certainty is that the compensation cess levied on demerit goods will stay on beyond 2022 and may even be raised, affecting several businesses, including the job intensive auto sector. Now, it says that so much so damaged. One thing we can have is that the cess collection and the GST is likely to continue beyond 2022. And the cess is levied on demerit goods like cigarettes, tobacco products, etc. It may even be raised, it may even be increased, the levies may even be increased, affecting several businesses, including some job intensive auto sector as well. Auto sector is considered to be job intensive. It involves, it, it incorporates a lot many people in their activity, and so a single factory employs a good number of people uh, when an auto sector factory is established. So this is the conclusion that given the damage, one thing is there for sure, and that is the levies on demerit goods are to continue beyond 2022, and they even be raised, but then that will affect several businesses as well as job losses. With this I close. Thank you very much.